Hello there and welcome another episode of the Designated Pundits. We are previewing each and every Major League Soccer team today. We're going Atlanta United. You know what we're doing by now, each and every Major League Soccer team. This is the fourth edition, Atlanta United. We think the team is kind of done with a lot of their team building for now. We'll see how long that stands. It is January 22nd, so if you're watching in the future, this is as of January 22nd. I'm here. I'm your host, Dion. I'm your host, Bob, here with my co-host, Dion. He's new. He's an Atlanta fan. He's been with us for just about a year now. So we're excited to talk Atlanta United with him. And we have the one and only Jason Longshore. Jason from Soccer Down Here, now with a longer show, right?
Yeah, well, I'm on a lot of places, but Soccer Down Here, our podcast network, started as one show. Now it's just a soccer media company based out of Atlanta. We partner with the station that I call Atlanta United Games on at 92.9 The Game. And my show on 92.9 The Game has expanded for 2026 to 2 hours every Tuesday night, 10 o'clock. And during the World Cup, we're going to be nightly from June 1st until the final, 2 hours at least every day during the World Cup on 92.9 The Game radio. It's going to be awesome.
Love it. Love to hear that. Comments already. Sam saying great start, guys. Thank you. Yes. Jason Longshore is like the ultimate professional. So if it seems like I'm outclassed here, that is absolutely the case. But we still think we have a great show for you, a great preview. We're going to talk about Atlanta United recap 2025. And then we're going to talk about what changed and what's going to be different next year. Let's get right into it. 2025, a little bit of a disappointment. 5 wins, 13 draws, and 16 losses. 14th place in the Western Conference. 4-8-5 at home, 1-5-11 away. And I had to look this up. First away win was August 31st against Nashville SC. Now, that's not the whole story. It's 38 goals. That's the story for me. Not scoring enough, 12th in the East. 63 goals against us, also really bad, 14th in the East. Minus 25 goal differential is 13th in the East. So not only were they bad on offense, they were bad on defense. They were bad everywhere. Sometimes you see teams in the 12th, 11th, 13th spot that are just miserable on one side of the ball. It was an both sides of the ball problem. And that brings me to this graphic. You guys spent a lot of money last offseason. What went wrong?
They didn't produce goals. I mean, the defensive issues were bad. They got sorted out at times, but for me, consistently, you were not dangerous in the attack. And even if you're all right defensively, when you're not dangerous attack-wise for so long, I mean, there were very few matches where it felt like this was a team that was threatening regularly. And then when they did, they weren't converting. So you get into this like triple whammy of, okay, you're struggling to create chances. All right, you're starting to create chances. Okay, you're not scoring goals. Then everything is on the defense to throw a clean sheet up there to keep you in a game, and then mistakes start to happen. And it just felt like these snowball effects as the year went on. I think this was a team that more than anything lacked confidence, and you started to see that throughout the year come into some of the mistakes that were made. Again, whether it's in front of goal or defensively, I think a lot of it came down to confidence. And how many times have we seen this over the years where a good team starts to struggle and then they start to question themselves and then the form continues to dip? And that's how it felt every time. Like that game in Nashville, for example, played really well on the road in Nashville and took care of business, and they weren't able to build on it. And that was just the issue. You had no multipliers for this team last year where things start to go well and you get a little bit of a run. You just didn't have that.
And I think in that one game where they won 1-0 against Nashville, the next game they backed it up with a 5-4 home loss, where they gave up 5 goals in the first half to the Columbus Crew.
That was such a chaotic game because, And it was a microcosm of this team and really what 2025 was, because you had, I'm trying to remember the exact order of the goals and how it happened. It felt like after you gave up the second, you saw that confidence issue really flare up, and the team went south and conceded a whole bunch of goals. And you're at the point there at halftime, you're like, wait a minute, this is really bad. This is not just you're struggling, this is catastrophic bad. But then you show some of the potential that we felt like this team had going into the season. You score 4 against Columbus, which was not easy to do against that Columbus team. And the end of the match, it was Columbus who was panicking, trying to hold on and get a result there. It had completely turned the other way, but you came up short. And that was just the nature of the season. You had a lot of hope, a lot of promise last year. You went out and you spent a lot of money, and it didn't pay off. And ultimately, as you got on the graphic, you had to make a coaching change. And Ronnie Dyla, who's won 3 trophies in 3 different leagues, which is very difficult to do, he tried everything. It didn't work. He ends up moving on. And Tata Martino was available, which was kind of unexpected last year all the way around, after leaving Miami at the end of the 2024 season when Atlanta knocked them out of the postseason. And he was still available. And it looked like for a minute there he was going to go to Los Angeles and replace Steve Cherundolo. That was the reporting out of South America. And then all of a sudden he ended up back here in Atlanta.
That must be a welcome union. Tata Martino came in, was it the first year that Atlanta was in the league? Won MLS Cup. So he definitely has that. I'm not sure the sequel is ever as good as the original.
Yeah,
but
you never know.
You're going to try. When we look at these, I said you spent big money last offseason. Almiron, Latte Lath, bringing Moranchuk in. And it just didn't, to me, that's got to be a coach. Like, I don't know if there are other things we're going to blame, but that's a coaching issue. If you have these moments of brilliance but can't put it together, if you can't get, to me, that's got to be coaching. So very interested to see what Tata Martino has.
I would actually say that it's not purely that. I mean, ultimately, that's who pays the price for it, right? Like if the results aren't there, you can change a coach before you can change 10 players. So that's what happens. We've seen it happen over the years everywhere. I watched, of course, everything and saw training sessions and saw this team consistently look better in training than they did on the field. I saw for a long stretch of the season. Now, it changed towards the end, and that is an accumulation of things, I think. But for a long stretch of the season, when you go and you look at goals and goals allowed, and you look at the expected goals and expected goals allowed, it felt like 2 completely different teams. It did not feel like the same story. They were creating chances, they weren't finishing. They were defending pretty well in terms of the quality of chances they were giving up, but they were giving up goals. And towards the end, it felt like everything just broke and it all then went very south. But halfway through, 3/4 through, the numbers did not make this team look as bad. And you look back at the whole thing, the numbers in those advanced metrics don't match the results. So I don't think it's purely coaching. I think a lot of it was mentality, and I think a lot of it was confidence. And it's something that Gonzalo Pineda had mentioned about this team before. Rob Valentino had mentioned it during his interim stint, and Ronnie Dyla mentioned it last year. They weren't tough. They weren't resilient. And you know how this league goes. You're going to have moments where you're going to have to win ugly. You're going to have moments where you're exhausted because you've traveled and had all these crazy travel issues, or you've flown across the country and you're jet lagged. You're going to have to grind out some games that are ugly at times. And this team didn't show they could do that consistently for the past few years. I think that's going to be the biggest change with Tata Martino. Is you look at the players that have come in, you look at the players that are being linked, and there were a bunch of links that popped up out of nowhere today. You look at the profile of these guys, and it feels like that toughness, that grittiness is something that is being addressed in who is in and who could be coming in. And I think that's going to make as big of a change as anything with this group right now.
Absolutely. Is there something you like a leadership thing, mentality? I mean,
it's kind of hard to pinpoint it. I mean, I think yes, both in different ways. Leadership. I mean, you've had Brad Gazan, who is one of the most experienced leaders that this league has ever seen, the U.S. men's national team program has ever seen. it wasn't because you didn't have a leader. I think it was because at times you had a lot of players who didn't handle the pressure of being an Atlanta United player well, because it is different. You don't go into an atmosphere like Mercedes-Benz Stadium in most places in the league. And that snowball effect that I mentioned earlier about just how it felt like everything got negative for the team and their production, that happens in games, and it happens plus and minus. When you get a goal early at the Benz and it starts to get loud, and then it gets louder and louder and louder. I've seen opposing teams come in and just fold. You go back to 2017 when they opened the stadium, had a whole bunch of home games in a short period of time. You would see early goals and teams just collapse because it got so loud and intense. But the flip side is also really difficult for, I think, young players who have come into to Atlanta United, and you walk out and it's great and it's loud and it's a lot of fans. And then if you're not playing well or you give up a goal early, you hear those smattering of boos. You hear things get quiet, and the quiet echoes as much as the loudness does. And you see then guys do one of two things. I've seen players try to do too much and get caught chasing and running and getting out of position and making mistakes. I've also seen guys completely tense up and not play and play scared. You've got to get the right kind of guys here. And I think it's a little bit beyond like leadership, purely leadership. You've got to get the right kind of guys who can rise to the occasion, who, if things are going against them, can change that. And if things are going well, they can put their foot on the gas and continue on and put teams away. This team last year felt like it questioned itself internally too much on the field, and they just never got any positive momentum going.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a very difficult place to play. I remember watching, it must have been the third season, 2019. New coach, I think he was from the Netherlands. And
Frank de Boer, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember it was like the third game of the season, watching like a fan reaction video, and it was having like, this isn't our style of play. It was not offensive. We scored 2 goals in our last 2 home games. This isn't Atlanta. It's a lot of pressure. I felt that.
Yeah, he used the word spoiled during that season, and I heard the whole statement. If you take it just completely out of context, you can use it in the way that we would call somebody spoiled, call a child spoiled. He was literally using it as a he's trying to praise in a way of everything that had happened the 2 years before he was here. He was saying that the fans had seen great soccer and had seen a lot of wins, and it was great. And they were like, it's the literal definition of spoiled. Like, if you are Dutch, you're going to be very literal. He was very literal, but it upset a lot of people. And yeah, there's an expectation that is very difficult here. I think when people say that there's not pressure in MLS, they are absolutely lying to you. Look at how many coaches lost their jobs last year. To say there's no pressure is crazy. Are you going to get relegated? No, you don't have that. But are you going to lose your job? Yeah. So there's pressure. Are you going to get yelled at? Yeah. Are you going to get yelled at in the supermarket like some coaches have said they want to see? No, you're probably not going to get that, thankfully. That's a good thing, by the way. But are you going to have to deal with moments like we've seen at Mercedes-Benz Stadium where these guys are playing hard and they're trying, but you're not playing well, and you hear those murmurs in the crowd, and man, they sound really loud when it's quiet in there. It's overwhelming, and I think it really scares some of these guys.
Absolutely. I like we said also about advanced metrics. However, I don't know if you know, there are no more advanced metrics. We can't access them anymore. So
well, yeah, there's always ways, but yes, our friends at FB Ref are no longer what they used to be, which is very sad because it's a very useful tool.
Dion, do you want to run us through the goal score from last year?
Yeah, so Latte Lot, 7 goals, 1 assist. Ranchuk, 6 goals, 3 assists. Miggy with 6 goals and 4 assists. Jamal with only 5 goals. And then Brooks Lennon with a goal and 3 assists. And then Saba with 5 assists on the season, which is kind of weird to see from Saba.
Yeah, he really early had a whole bunch of assists when the team was scoring some goals, and then didn't get on the board very much in the last 2/3 of the season. TRA, I thought, was maybe the player who overproduced what you expected last season. I thought the team was really good when he was up top as the number 9, when Latte Lot was out injured. I think he's he's a very underrated player in what he gives you, because I think it's pretty thorough. He can be a target. He can defend well high up the field. He's a tireless worker. He's had injury issues, and that's the biggest issue with him, is I think where he is in his career and what he can give you. He's just not a starter because he has a bunch of issues injury wise. But he's a great guy to have off the bench. Almiron, Moranchuk, and Latte Lot, those are your 3 designated players, and that's not enough production from your 3 designated players when they're in the attacking phases of the game. I think, Moranchuk, when you look at what he gave you, he was your best consistent player of that group. I didn't think he had as many ups and downs. For whatever reason, he ended up becoming a guy that I think became a punching bag for a lot of people, which was sad to see. He's a very talented player, a very creative player. I think he created a lot of chances that didn't get finished. I think Miguel Almiron, it was fascinating to watch because you're talking about a guy who 2017, 2018, those 2 years are 2 of the best seasons back-to-back that we've seen a player have in Major League Soccer. And I think we always go to Joseph Martinez and what he did because he scored goals. What Almiron did from an entire perspective is as good as anybody in terms of impacting games as we've seen in this league over a 2-year period. He's not that guy anymore. He can't be. He's played in England. He's not quite 10 years older, but he's not as fast as he used to be. He was never a super technical player, and that speed could change it. He's a savvy player, though. And I think second half of the year, it got better for him. It definitely did. I thought for Miguel, he was a player who came in with a ton of expectation. I think he put a lot of pressure on himself because he wanted to come back. He loves the club. He loves the city. He was very happy to be here. And I think maybe he tried to do too much and at times got into those positions where he's out of position, into those spots where, he's trying to do too much and it just didn't quite click. Second half of the year, it got better. That's going to be the biggest thing for Tata Martino, is getting the most out of these 3. And with Latte Lot, look, he's just got to score goals. He had chances to score more goals. He should have had probably double what he did. He has the ability to. He's done it before. The expectation was huge. He did not deliver on that. But we've seen this happen before in this league where guys come in. He was very nearly a Premier League player in the August 24 window. Down to the last day, Ipswich almost brought him in, and Middlesbrough couldn't get a replacement done in time. So he stayed at Middlesbrough. I think that affected him in that second half of the 2024 calendar year. Came here late in the window in 25 in preseason. I think he played his first preseason game the week before the opener. And by about midway through, you could see that physically he was very tired and ended up taking quite a while off to try to recover. I think he had a lot of small nagging injuries. He looked refreshed afterwards, but he wasn't sharp. He's had a long off season. You have to have him score goals in that 15 plus category for this team to be successful in 2026.
And you hit on everything that I was going to ask you. I was going to ask
psychic.
you what, because that's the thing. I think people looking at this league, whenever a guy comes in late in preseason, they don't produce like we think or expect them to, because I don't think they have enough time. And I think that is one of the things that really happened with both him and Almiron. Was Almiron here for the whole preseason?
No, I didn't think so. He was about the middle, if I remember right. Because he joined them when they were in Florida, and he was able to train. Latte Lot, I think I remember I did the last preseason game. It was at home behind closed doors, and I think it was kind of last minute that he was able to play. And he played about 30, 40 minutes then, because he had just gotten his visa by that point. And it's that double whammy of you don't have the chemistry with the players around you because you don't have that whole preseason. You don't bond with them. But then also you haven't had a break. And by the time you get to that summer, your body is like, okay, now it's my off season, right? Oh no, I have to fly across the country and play a match. My body says no. And that's kind of where I think he got to, and they kept trying to push through it, and he kept trying to push through it, and it just never clicked for him in 25. And I really hope, because I think that's the most important thing for 2026 is you've got to get 15 plus goals out of the number 9 position from a starter. So I mean, if he misses some games or whatever, and TRA has to take over, your starting player there has to get you 15 plus goals. I think there's just no way around it.
I agree with that.
Completely agree. I love interrupting people when they talk, but with him, we just let him cook. It's like, Chris Henderson, we just let it go.
Me. Nah, interrupt me. Interrupt me. It's all good.
Dion's going to take us through some players in and players out.
Yeah, so Josh Cohen out, Brooks Lennon, which I got to ask you about Brooks Lennon.
Yeah.
Do you think his time in Atlanta, do you think he was underrated or overrated?
I think underrated, honestly. I'm probably one of the only ones saying it.
Well, I'm right there with you. I always say that because all of his shot and goal scoring chances that he created off of that right side, like he was underrated in my opinion.
Yeah, he had a really bad injury timing situation, and I think it was which year was it? I think it was 23 or 24. Where I think it was 23, where he got called into the January camp with the national team, and he had just started to get rated, in my opinion, properly, and he got hurt at the end of that, and he missed a good bit of preseason. He also, you look at the number 9s that this club has had during his time that he was here. He didn't get to play with prime Joseph Martinez. I think the year, or probably not a full calendar year, is probably in spurts of Yorgos Giacomakis. I thought Lennon created for him and created opportunities for him. But there were long stretches where he did not have a functioning number 9 to get on the end of the crosses. I think he's a really good player. He was always a guy that I really appreciated as well. I mean, just, kind of behind the scenes, off the field stuff. He was always a player when after a game and nobody wanted to talk after a bad result, he would talk. And he'd always take time. He was always really good to me. He's a player that, I really, I think, felt was underrated and tried to change that narrative unsuccessfully, to be honest. But I think he was a player who gave the club a lot and ends up now as the second most appearances in club history. And I don't think he's thought of in the way that kind of guy should be.
Yep. Oh, I'm with you on that one. Also, No Cobb goes to Colorado, and then Sleesh is also out there in Atlanta.
The Sleesh one was a little bit of a surprise for me. I thought he was Atlanta's best player last season, but it's an opportunity for him to be back in Europe and to really cement his spot with the Polish national team. I know that was something that Ronnie Dyla took a lot of pride in Sleesh improving from day one of preseason last year to the end of the season and becoming a regular with Poland, who should be in the World Cup this summer. Sleesh was one who rose to the occasion, and I thought gave you some of those things that you didn't get enough of. But it's a good opportunity for him. It's a good price to get him as well. That helps you go out into the market, and we'll see how you replace that player.
Looking at the players in, we got Thomas Jacob. Then you got the new keeper, Lucas Hoyos, and Santiago Pitta.
I'll run through him real quick. Jacob, he developed at Newell's Old Boys. Hoyos comes over from Newell's Old Boys. Tata Martino managed Newell's Old Boys and played at Newell's Old Boys. So, you get that Rosario, Argentina connection going here. Jacob was at Necaxa for 6 months, so the Apertura of Liga MX. He had come up through the system at Newell's. He's a guy who I think right now could play as a third center back for you. If you play 3 center backs, he is a guy who can play as a right back. Can also play in the midfield. I don't think they want to play him in the midfield just from things that have been said, but he played it for Necaxa and he played it for Newell's at times. So he has that kind of ability. Hoyos, veteran goalkeeper, has always been a pretty regular starter in the Argentine league, but he comes in to compete or mentor or push Jaden Hibbert, who got a lot of starts late last season. So I'll be really fascinated to see how that battle plays out. And Santiago Pita, I don't know how much he impacts the first team this year. He was one of my favorite players to come to Atlanta in the academy. I saw him in the academy before he made his twos debut last year. And down the stretch for Atlanta United 2 last year, he really started to shine. I've had a couple interviews with him. You can find him on our Soccer Down Here network. Great kid, unbelievable left foot. But I think what I saw from him last year was you see these kids who come up and they're super technical and super talented, and they can't quite translate that to the next level when it's more physical and it's more demanding and it's just more difficult. He started to figure out some of the elements of that last year with Atlanta United too. So he's a player that I really am rooting for just because he's one of the most technical young players that I've seen come through Atlanta's academy. Moved up here from South Florida, and I love his ability, and I hope that he can continue to figure that out and really impact the first team.
Love it. Let's take a look at the depth chart now. We've already talked about the top 3 positions. Those are your DPs. You got Latte Lath, that striker, Tiare behind him, and Togashi on the left side, Seba, and on the right side, Miguel Almiron. There are a couple players that we have listed behind them. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify now with video, Alexei Moranchuk occupies the number 10. That I think we could kind of set in stone for most games. That is your best front four.
Yeah, I think the question this year from just a big structural standpoint is, does Tata Martino play a variation of a 4-3-3, or does he play 3 center backs? Because when you go back to his time in Atlanta in 17 and 18, he started in a 4-3-3 and he won MLS Cup in a 3-5-2 or 3-5-1-1, however you want to call it. He shifted. So he's flexible tactically, and it'll be down to what the players in the group are once he gets started. And it could change. I would not be surprised if it changes at times game to game, at times based off availability, but I don't think he's married to 4-3-3 or 3-4-3 or 3-5-2. I think he's going to be pragmatic in the sense of, this is what I have to work with. This is my best way to get success. And right now, and this is before any of the possible rumors that literally came out of nowhere starting this morning. Adrian Gill, a Barcelona youth player, has played central midfield. He's played as a fullback as well. He could be coming in as a supplemental roster spot. So to either solidify those spots with Alzate, with Muyumba, with Fortune, with Riley, with Sanchez, or potentially to compete as a right back, where he's gotten a little bit of experience there lately. Guido Rodriguez is the biggest name that's been linked as of late. Was on Argentina's 2022 World Cup winning squad, a veteran at West Ham who's not playing much right now. He's been linked with moves to quite a few different clubs at the moment, but Atlanta is in that mix, according to reporting out of South America. He would be the 6th that I think Tata Martino is looking for. And where I would be really intrigued is then, okay, is it Alzate as more of an 8? I get really reluctant to go hardcore on 6, 8, 10 because I think at times we pigeonhole guys into spots where really it's about the chemistry of the trio if you're playing 3 in the midfield. And,
Sure.
Sometimes the guy who's the 6 on paper doesn't actually sit all the time, and somebody else has to cover for him and all that. But Rodriguez would be the most defensive of the group if you get him. If you don't have him, and it's something that Tata Martino said to Doug Robertson, who's covering the team down in Florida right now for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, he feels like he needs that 6, that defensive midfielder, because he feels like right now the only one that he sees as that guy is Will Riley. Jay Fortune has mostly been more of the mix, the box-to-box midfielder. He's coming back from injury. I don't know where he's going to be day one of the regular season, but he's a player that I really rate highly. He has played some 6, but he's been more successful higher up the field. Muyumba and Alzate are 2 other guys who can play it, but I think they're more of the mixed midfielders, the box-to-box guys. Cooper Sanchez is still very young, He was part of the U17 World Cup team for the U.S. last fall. Played really well against Miami late in the season when Atlanta felt like it had nobody on the roster during the international break. Cooper is not exactly a 10. He's probably more of an 8 right now. I want to see where he ends up, but I think he's going to get a lot of time with Atlanta United too this season. So that central midfield, and I mentioned Jakob, he could factor in there. That is a possibility, but it doesn't sound like they're really hoping that's the case. That central midfield, I think, is going to be the key, because then it affects everything else. Almiron can play as a 10. He can play as a winger. He can play on either side as a winger. He can play as a second forward as well. Moranchuk is a 10. He played deeper at times for Atlanta United last season, a little bit more circumstantial than on a regular basis. You really want him in that half space on the right side of the field where he can cut in on his left foot, whether he's a 10 and he gets there or he's a winger and he cuts into it. You want him in that spot. He played on the wing for Atalanta. We didn't see it last year with Atlanta at all. Saba has got to produce more than he did last year, but he has in this league. He has before. Mm-hmm. You could play without wingers, and you could play with Almiron, Moranchuk behind Latte Lot, but then you're going to need the width coming from whether it's Ronald Hernandez, whether it's Tomas Jakob, whether it's Pedro Amador. There is a left back who's been linked from San Lorenzo as well, Elias Baez, and that one sounds like it's pretty close. But he's another young U22 guy, so you always wonder with a U22 coming in and Jakob fits into this. Are they going to come in and be a 30-game starter, or are they going to need some time to adjust? So this is a depth chart that's, I'd say today, pretty close. I think the Muyumba spot is probably the most up for grabs as we sit right now, beyond goalkeeper. Goalkeeper is its own category right now.
Sure.
Center back, if you play 2, Mihai, Better Call, Gregerson are all going to fight for that spot. Jakob can play inside, but more in a 3 center back setup. Edwards can play inside as more of a 3rd center back as well. But that midfield for me is the biggest question mark if you're in this shape. The wings, can Luke Brennan push? Can Santiago Pita push? Can they put pressure on Saba? Do they give you a possibility of doing some different things? Or do you look at more of a 3/5 defensively with wing backs and tuck Almiron and Moranchuk in a little bit? And if you call Miggy a second forward, or if you call him a dual 10 with Moranchuk, however that looks, I think we're going to be talking about this team more in the theoretical in terms of shape than like hardcore this, just because I think you're going to have to figure it out a little bit on the fly. And I think it's going to be somewhat fluid. I think guys are going to play multiple positions and multiple roles, and it's going to be more about the relationships in the group than where they start on the lineup graphic.
Love that. We're seeing that all over Major League Soccer over the past few years, where it feels like it used to be more rigid. I used to be able to know, okay, we're playing this team. Here's the formation. Here are the players in the situation. And hey, Tata Martino, no one does it better than him. So, you know, I do want to hit some of the questions that are coming out. This is our co-host, Scott, who couldn't be here today. What makes the team better in 2026 versus 2015? Is it coaching, or is there special sauce amongst the players?
Oh, I don't know yet. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I think if this team is better in 2026 than they were in 2025, it really goes back for me to being more dangerous in the attack. I think scoring more goals.
Sorry, we're covering your face when these graphics come up.
Oh, no, it's all good.
Hoping Tata fixes you guys this year. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Me too. It was not a fun season last year.
Sometimes it stinks when your rivals don't play well.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just want them to, like, you know, go out there, play some good soccer. And, you know, the more when Atlanta's good, there's more energy in the league. You know, I think of Joseph Martinez scoring 30 goals in a season. Like, that's what I want to see. Maybe not from Atlanta, but like, you know,
you want to see it until they play your team. You want to beat a good team. And I'm
Eastern Conference Finals and what was that,
2018. Yep. There's that.
Another question. Patrick Weah with a question mark.
Yeah, he's on the second team, and he really came up big late in the second half of last season. And you know, we take a lot of time with Soccer Down Here to cover the second team. We do radio broadcast of the second team matches. I think we're one of the only teams in Next Pro that has audio broadcasts of the second team. They're going to be in Athens this year, a little bit further away from the Atlanta core because their home stadium is being used as a training site for World Cup. So we're still doing it. But Patrick Weah was a player who came here. There was some expectation like, okay, maybe he might be able to factor into a first team spot. Didn't. Had some injuries. I think struggled. You had a coaching change. Steve Cook left the club. He went to Lexington to become their technical director on the youth side. And Jose Silva took over. And he went really young with the group. And what that did for Patrick, he went from being kind of in the middle of the group age-wise and being just a guy to actually being one of the older players, even though he's young. And he really stepped up as a leader. He took some of the young guys under his wing, like watching him grow as a professional and then produce on top of it. Really cool to see. He got a call up and he played in that game against Miami late in the season. That was a big reward for him. He's not going to start the season pushing for opportunities, but he's a guy that with TRA and Togashi being a little bit older right now, being your second and third forwards, you hope that Patrick Weah can turn into that and be that second forward and start to push even higher, but also be able to play on the wing a little bit for you, depending on your setup.
Awesome. Good stuff. Let's get into some questions. The first part we have are questions we're going to discuss. And then I have some rapid fire questions for you near the end of the show. And this is all going to my article. You can go to hooligansoccer.com. I'm going to use mostly the same graphics. I already saw one or two typos, but we're going to fix that, get that up on the Hooligan Soccer Network. And the video will be posted there too for you guys. First, which player outside of the starting 11 has the best chance at winning a starting job? And we will use my supposed starting 11.
Yeah, I think out of what we know right now and kind of where we're looking at it, I would say Jakob is a guy that I could see coming in and being a starter more often than not. And it might be in different roles. So it might not be purely as winning the right back spot, for example. It might be he's that guy they can slot in as the third center back when they want to play three. He's that guy that in a pinch can come into the midfield and play as a six and sit deep. So I think Jakob, out of who we have listed and maybe who's not seen as a starter right now, is the guy who has the best chance to get more starting minutes.
Love it. What are some realistic expectations for 2026?
So hard because I think, and we talked about it during the week, what the roster build is going to look like for this group. And it was very unknown up until today, and now it feels like it's accelerating, so we don't really know what it's going to settle into. Right now, with what they have and what I think is realistic, I mean, look, if they don't get Guido Rodriguez, I think they're going to get a six. They're going to get somebody to play that role. I would say you're looking at somewhere between 4th and 8th in the East. That's kind of where my head is at right now. They can definitely overperform that. But I'm probably a little I want to see it first. And I want to see the production and the attack first before I go even to the 4 number. I think they have the talent to. They have the talent to be higher than that, especially if they get the 6 and get that sorted. But with what we've seen over the past couple of seasons, I'm saying, and that's a wide range. But I think a lot of the East is in that kind of a range, to be honest. I think outside of Miami and maybe Cincinnati that's kind of established themselves high up, I think you have a lot of teams that could range 5, 6, 7, 8 spots, depending on how it goes. It's going to be really competitive.
And Atlanta is one of those teams. I compare them. My Red Bulls is another. There are 4 or 5 teams in the league that I think if they just get in the time capsule, go back to last season and play everything again, I think you get very different results. So I do think that is a very difficult question to answer there. Last one. I turn on Atlanta United on a random week, and I just want to sit down and watch a game. What are some storylines that could follow throughout the season?
I think the one that I keep coming back to, and this would be my storyline consistently. So when you get a chance to tune into an Atlanta United game, look to see if they look like they're scrappy, because that has been the missing element for a few years now, and multiple coaches have cited it. And that has to change. For anything else to happen that takes you more positive, this team has to be tougher, grittier, scrappier. I mean, we can, whatever adjective we want to pull up. It's that thing that doesn't show up on a spreadsheet. It's that thing that's not going to show up even when FBref had all the stats. It's something that is just, it's hard to define, but I want to see a team that looks that way. Maybe to be fair, looks a little more Argentine. You know, when you think of Argentina, I think it's easy to think of, I don't know, Maradona was, you know, my hero and Messi's the GOAT. You think of that elite skill, but you look at Argentina in 2022, you look at Argentina in 1986, it was the rest of the group fighting and scrapping and clawing and whatever it took to win. And I think you had that in 17 and 18, and you haven't had it in a while. You have that. So when you tune in randomly, look for that. And if you see it, the team should be in a better place in the Eastern Conference.
So we're looking for that Dan Campbell biting kneecap off mentality from the Atlanta United players.
I don't know what that would translate to Spanish and Argentine, but yes, that's what we need.
Dion, anything before we go to our final graphic here?
No, I mean, I like what he's saying, but yeah, I was going to ask you, do you think, because I know that when it comes to that scrappiness, that's really the player. But do you think that Tata can make that difference as a manager compared to these other managers to really get that out of the guys?
I think he's just different. And, you know, I'm in a really unique position where I get to know a lot of the managers. With Tata, there's obviously a language barrier that's going to be a little bit different than it was with Gonzalo and with Ronnie and with Rob, the last three that we've had. Rob was the interim in between Pineda and Dyla. Gonzalo Pineda was a very scrappy central midfielder, and I saw him get into players at times. I saw him really demand a lot from players, and I don't think it's something that he didn't ask for. Rob, I think Valentino, and especially in that time in late 2024, going into that series with Miami, you saw, and that's why you got past Miami. You saw that grittiness, that scrappiness, that fight. And you just didn't have the talent with that team to go further because you didn't have a 9 at the time. Last year, I saw Ronnie Dyla be as hard as any coach I've seen on the training pitch with players. It happened plenty. It was never a situation where he didn't demand it. And I don't think Valentino didn't demand it. Pineda didn't demand it. They all demanded it. But the players have to produce it. Now, I think the difference with Tata Martino is he is a lot more experienced than all of them. And that's not to say that the inexperience hurt them, but when you have that experience and you have that track record and that cachet, guys are going to react differently to you. And I think maybe it's nothing that he does different. He could say the exact same things that the other manager said, but because he's Tata Martino and he's been to World Cups and he's managed Barcelona, players react differently to him. So I could see it being different because of who he is, which he's earned over his career. He's earned that cachet, and that's going to help him in a lot of ways with this group. And I think some of the tweaks they're making to the roster. I think Chris Henderson is really grinding to build this team up right now and get it where he knows Tata wants it and get the right kind of personalities in the group.
All right. We will hope for the best from Tata Martino and the boys this season. I definitely think that's a really nice breakdown. See, I come from it. I'm an educator. I don't spend time, with the coaches. So I'm always quick to blame the coach. Like, team can't get inspired.
Natural.
It's the coach. You do have to take into account these aren't 18-year-old kids. They are grown adults. You do have to kind of handle your own business in the point. I'm still blaming a lot of last season on Ronnie Dial, though I just don't. I'm allowed.
You also, maybe the Red Bulls
NYC
NYC thing. Maybe that NYC element comes in there.
Our second biggest rival, second to Atlanta United. Now that our advanced statistics are gone, we need to get some questions on, who we're going to be picking this season throughout the course of different matches. So I want to know first, what style does Atlanta United match up well against?
That's a really good question. I wish I had an answer for you right now, but I really don't, because I'm trying to think. I'm like, okay, would it be a pressing team? Well, I need to see this team build out of the back a little more consistently than they did last year. Okay, would it be a team that sits back deep? No, they didn't create enough last year to break that open. Would it be a team that gets out in transition that you can get in transition against them on? Maybe that should be the answer, because I think when you look at Moranchuk's passing ability, you look at Latte Lot's pace, you look at Almiron, his quickness. He doesn't have the pace over 40 yards like he did, but he can get you in 5. He can get that space in a short burst. Alzate is a very good passer of the ball. I think he's a player who can be that box-to-box midfielder and help you. It should be in those moments where teams get extended and you win the ball and get forward quickly. That should be the answer. We're going to find out.
Love it. Which styles do you think the Atlanta was going to match up poorly against?
Right now, I would say, and I don't think they're going to be this way this year. I think they're going to be a little more open, but like Minnesota was last year, where they sat back a lot and they defended a lot and encountered. I think that would really frustrate this group, especially where they are today. And that could change over time. I think, again, Moranchuk, Alzate, they have the ability to pick out that pass, but a team that's going to sit back deep and limit your space and just frustrate you right now, that would be the team that this team would struggle the most against.
Love it. What player do you have improving the most in 2026?
That's a really good question. Because some of it is going to be improving statistically as opposed to improving like their game.
That's kind of what we're looking for, players who are going to take a jump on the stat sheet more than, a young guy who's going to, an 18-year-old who progresses a ton more in his career. Maybe Latte Lath, who doesn't need to get better. He just needs, the best ability is availability. Get on the field, score a bunch of goals really soon,
That should be the answer, is Latte Lot, because he should score twice as many goals as he did last year. He should. Moranchuk was my first thought too, because I think if that happens, which it should, you're talking about a guy in Alexei Moranchuk who to me is a double-digit goal, double-digit assist kind of player in this league. The one in terms of the non-numbers kind of thing that will improve and I think be a player that the league is talking about is Steven Alzate. I really think he's going to be a guy who doesn't get you a ton of goals and assists, but is that linking midfielder that is just really clean on the ball in tight spots.
And this one, again, I want to kind of use it on the stat sheet.
Yeah.
Which player regresses in 2026? It could be because of age. It could be because of availability. It could be because their spot was overtaken. It could just be because there's a lot of mouths to feed. What player do you think is going to maybe take a step back this year?
There weren't a whole lot of like big stat providers last year, so this is not an easy one. I'll tell you who the one could be, and it could be statistically takes a little bit of a step back, but actual impact of the team might be a little bit higher. It wouldn't surprise me if Miguel Almiron did not have the same number of goal contributions, but ended up being part of a better team. I think Almiron is a guy who, again, we saw what he did here in 17 and 18. We saw what he did at Newcastle in spurts. He's a very complete player. Like, he was an 8 in Argentina at Lanús before he came to Atlanta. He wasn't a 10 coming to Atlanta. And he didn't really play like a traditional 10 here either. It was different in that Tata Martino team at that time. And he played as a second forward quite a bit. I could see him being a more complementary player this year and the team being better because other guys pick up maybe some of those stats. But he does some of the things that don't show up in the goals and assists. We'll see. Hopefully there is not an answer to that question because everybody is performing better than they did last year on that stat sheet, because there is not a lot of room for it to go the other way.
I think it depends also if you count the secondary assist like you do in Major League Soccer against, more traditional stat keeping entity there. Dion, anything from you?
I mean, I could ask you a million questions, but no, I'm good right now.
If you are watching, we are Chicago right up against clock, 7 o'clock. We'll be here talking with Campbell from Chicago. It's going to be an awesome episode too. Jason, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. We know we don't even need to research. We can just put it on autopilot and let you talk. Takes a whole lot off our hands, and being able to come in, and do it tonight with us. We really appreciate you. We really love having you on.
Yeah, anytime. And stick around for that Chicago episode, because that's a team that could end up making the biggest jump from 25 to 26. And they made it jump from 24 to 25. But I really like what they've done in the offseason.
I said it was a great year for burr halters in this league. And I'm not going to say which one. I'll let you decide.
That's a good line. I like that.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. This is the 2026 Atlanta United season preview.